Hello everybody, welcome to this webinar on letter writing. There are, as you know, two types of letters, formal letters and informal letters. I choose to discuss formal letter first because normally in your exams, formal letter writing is what you get. So how do we define a formal letter? Well, any communication that is considered to be official enough to be explicitly written or included in a letter is called a formal letter. In English, there are a number of conventions that should be kept in mind when writing a formal or business letter. Well, in addition to this, you need to write as simply and as clearly as possible and not make the letter longer than necessary. You have to always keep in mind that it is a formal letter and it's not sent to, most of the time it is sent to somebody who is a higher official, and this person is somebody unknown to you. So, which is why you should keep in mind that you should not personalize any content in the letter. And because of this, you need to remember not to use informal language like contractions. Like instead of IT apostrophe S, it is better to write it is. Well, the term formal letter can be used to involve any letter written for a formal purpose, as I have already explained. And this could be a recommendation letter, an invitation letter, a complaint letter, a request letter, a letter written as a job application, a proposal for something, or a letter that you write to refer somebody to someone. The layout now has to be kept in mind, and the layout for all formal letters is more or less the same. When I say this, what I mean is that irrespective of the topic that you have for a formal letter, the plot or the structure of the formal letter, any formal letter, will more or less be the same. Fine. So the content and the information that your letter contains or conveys does not impact the structure of the letter. I hope you got it. Well, so let us now look at what are the standard parts or the parts of a standard formal letter. Well, let us first take a quick look at all the parts, and then I'll take you in detail and tell you individually what each part has. The first part is called the heading. Now, this heading, in this heading or under this heading, the letterhead or the return address and date should be written. That means if you are sending a letter to somebody, then your address must be written at this part. Next comes the inside address. Now, inside address is the address to the recipient of the letter. That means you're sending a letter to somebody and that inside address contains the address of this person. Post that comes salutation. In salutations, there are greetings, and we'll discuss greetings in detail. After salutation, which I have not mentioned here, but we'll take a look at it when you come to the formal letters, the sample formal letter, should be the subject of the letter. So the subject of the letter is not a part of or a separate part of the letter. It's included in the body, which is why I have not mentioned it over here. But then after the salutation, you must be sure to write the subject of the letter. Then you come to the main part of the letter, which we call the body. Now, because it is a formal letter, the body has to be short and crisp. The contents of the letter are solely at the discretion of you as a writer, and they may include not only information but a suggestion or a solution to any problem that you have presented to the recipient of the letter. Now, keeping all this in mind, you have to write, but you must make sure that the message that you convey is given directly without any personal inquiries in that. Fine? After this, we come to the complimentary close. The complimentary close is a polite remark or a phrase or a group of words which ends the letter before the signature line. Signature line, as the word suggests, is a handwritten signature for typed letters. That means you sign with ink, in ink, and then later on comes your name in brackets. This is sometimes placed in envelopes. Now, handwritten type letters are folded and kept in envelopes and sent. Now, in this case, you must ensure that you sign the letter in ink. Right? So, I'll read out again. signature for typed letters, sometimes placed in envelopes if going in post, are more commonly now as they are sent as emails, but they still may be printed by the recipient to be kept on file depending on the purpose for which you have sent that letter. I hope things are clear by now. Well, let us now look at the description of each individual part, because when you write a letter in the exam, you know every part carries some marks, and keeping this in perspective, you need to be very clear with what you're writing. You need to be clear about not only the content and the information, but also the accuracy of your data. So when I come to heading, which is as we discussed a little while ago, the first part of the letter, it needs to be written at the top left hand corner of the page, right? Here you write your address. You either write your address or you type. Now because it's a handwritten, I mean it's an online exam now, you will need to type. Irrespective of whether you are writing it in ink or whether you are typing, you need to have this address at the place where it is mentioned here. That means at the top left hand corner of the page. The address should not be preceded by your name. Your name need not come here, because as you would already know, you need to sign your name at the end. So it is not necessary at all that you have your name at the beginning. Normally nowadays we've observed that because it's common that the recipient should be aware of your email email address or your telephone number for the purpose of communication, people tend to write their email numbers and email addresses or their phone numbers. Now this is not done because it would make you lose marks. It would not earn you any benefit. It would end up making you lose marks. So you have to stick to the format, to the structure, to the plot, and write just your address. Now when you write your address also, you have to be careful. You write the post box number, then you normally follow it by a street number, the name of your locality, followed by the name of the city, the name of your state, and the PIN code. Well, when I take you to the sample letter, you'll get to know how it is written. But please keep this in mind. We move on to the next one, the inside address. The inside address has to have the contents in the order in which they come on your screen. The name and address of the recipient. Now, when the word name comes to your mind, I mean, comes before you, probably you would get confused, because most times we do not know the name of the person to whom we are writing. Well, that's right. But in this age of information, when we have the net at our disposal, we tend to know the name of the person, at least not, if not the complete name, we tend to know the surname of the person. So for example, you can write to Mr. Reddy, Minister of Finance, etc. So it normally has to have a name followed by the designation, and in case you are not aware of the name, just write the manager, State Bank of India, and go on. Fine. So name and address of the recipient followed by the title. I mean, as I've told you, name and address of the recipient. It has to be addressed to a specific person. This specific person may have a name which is known to you, or a title or designation which has to be included in the eventuality the name is unknown. After that comes the address in the line which is below it, and then you leave a line, you leave a space, and then enter the date on which you are writing the letter. Fine. The next part of the letter is salutation. Now, after having written the date, please skip one line after the inside address, the complete thing, the address, and skip one line, and then you need to write the salutation. Because it is a formal letter, the salutation will always be formal. The most usual form of greeting is dear. Now, when you write dear, most of the times in India we get confused and take it as an endearing word. Well, it is not. Dear is just a salutation form of address, and it does not mean this person is dear to you. So you can happily write dear followed by Mr. So-and-so or Miss So-and-so, in case you do not know, I mean, you're addressing it to a woman, but you have no idea of the marital status of the woman. Now, it happens that you may know the person, you may probably have an idea that this post is held by somebody who's a female, but you may not know the exact marital status of this person. Now, the best word to fit in here is MS, which is pronounced as Ms. So Ms can be written, can be used to address anybody. If it's an unmarried person, a single person, or a married person, irrespective of whether the person is married or not, this term can be used. Fine. If you know the person holds a title like doctor or professor, please don't hesitate. Go ahead and write that. Okay. After this, we come to the main part of the letter, which we call body. So as I've written over there, the main part of the letter comes immediately after the salutation, but this body also contains the subject. So after writing the salutation, Miss, dear Mr. So-and-so, or dear Miss So-and-so, and one thing you have to keep in mind, in case you're not comfortable with writing dear so-and-so, it is absolutely permissible that you omit the dear. You can just write Mr. So-and-so or Miss So-and-so. Fine. So it's not a hard and fast rule that this term, the salutation dear, be brought into the picture. Again, skip one line and write the subject. The subject is the topic on which you are writing that letter, be it a complaint, be it a greeting, or whatever, that has to be in place. Again, skip a line and start the body. When you start writing a letter which is formal in nature, what you need to keep in mind is that it has to be very short. That means you do not have to make it verbose or do not have to beat about the bush when you explain something, and the letter should convey a very clear, crisp message. So please ensure that you use short, clear, and logical paragraphs. I have used the word paragraphs here, but in a formal letter, more than 2 paragraphs are generally not possible, because it's an exam. You also have to keep the word count in mind. Normally in most of our, normally in our bank exams, the word limit is 150 words. Now, you may exceed the word limit to, let's say, 10%. You can have a letter which runs into 170 words, but you cannot have a formal letter which is 200 words long. So you have to limit yourselves to the word count that has been suggested or mentioned to you there, which is why the number of paragraphs has to be limited to 2. Fine. So use short, clear, logical paragraphs. And the message that has to be given should be given directly without any personal enquiries, because it's a formal letter. Then we come to the complementary clause. Now, 2 paragraphs of body finishes the message or completes the information or message that you need to convey, and then you look at ending your letter. A complementary clause is a short and polite remark that ends your letter. And again, it has to begin one line after the last body paragraph. That means where the last paragraph ends, skip a line and then write the complementary clause. The first word of the closing has to be in capital. And most commonly, we end up writing thank you or thanking you. Okay, and then T of thank has to be in capital. And after thank you or thanking you, you need to have a comma. After this, you will need to have the signature line in place, and you have to have ample space between the complementary clause and the signature line, because the signature line is the end of the letter and you have to sign there. So you need to have ample space over there. Please ensure that you skip 4 lines and then you end the letter. You have a hand signature for type letters, as I've already mentioned when I started the webinar. Skip 1 line after the last paragraph of the body of the letter and type the closing. Only 1 word of the closing has to be in capital. Again, this also has to be punctuated with a comma. Several lines should be left after the closing and type or print for your signature. Actual handwritten signature to be inserted between these 2 printed words written in ink. So what does it mean? It means that whether you are sending a letter which you are typing out and sending, or whether you're writing a letter in ink, you have to ensure that you sign. And after you sign, your actual complete name has to be there within brackets below the signed part, right? At least 4 lines after the close of your signature to be skipped before typing out the word to be signed. This is something, again, we've discussed already. Women may put their title if they wish to be addressed by that title. That means you can write in the salutation also, you can use the term Miss, Mrs. or Miss. And if you yourself as a sender wish to be addressed by the recipient by that name, then it is absolutely perfectly fine to write Miss so-and-so or Mrs. so-and-so or Miss so-and-so. The signature should be either in blue or black ink, and care needs to be maintained that the pen should not be of various colors. Okay, green, red, pink, all these colors should be avoided because it's formal. It has to be presented in a very, very formal manner. The look has to be very formal. Again, here there is something which I do tell my students, but then you have to take, you again may not stick to it. The idea is that if you are aware of the name of the recipient or you know the recipient personally, then normally people tend to write yours sincerely. And if you don't know the person is absolutely unfamiliar and you're writing, to either complain or address him for something, then the better thing is to write yours faithfully. But now in exams, this is something which is not considered. So conventionally, you do write yours sincerely if you know the recipient, and you write yours faithfully if you do not know the recipient. But in bank exams, now this is not something which will make you lose marks or earn marks. I mean, if you don't write anything, of course you lose marks. But then whether you write yours sincerely or you write yours faithfully, it's absolutely fine. So here now we have an example of a standard formal letter. That means it's a sample formal letter. Questions are coming in, and please hang on. I'll take you through. After finishing this, we'll address the questions one by one. This is very important. I hope most of your doubts will be clarified by going through this content. The topic which I have before you on my screen is write a letter in about 150 words to the manager of a famous restaurant in your city complaining about the poor quality of the food served and the inefficient service from the staff. Okay, so this is essentially basically a complaint letter. So we start with the address. The first thing is your address. We write plot number 436 by 86A, road number 36. So you understand the postbag number is being mentioned, followed by the road number, the street number. Then the locality is Jubilee Hills, the name of your town or city, Hyderabad, the state, Telangana, followed by the pin. Leave a couple of lines and then address, in this case, the manager. So this is the inside address. The inside address starts with the manager, followed by the name of the hotel or the restaurant in this case. Now, because you do not know the manager's name, it's absolutely fine to address him as the manager. The manager, Fusion Kitchen, Emerald Plaza, 4th floor, Panjagutta, Hyderabad, Telangana, followed by the pin of that area. Of course, this is all fictional, but then when you write a letter in an exam, you don't have to write actual addresses. So anything is fine. What you are tested for or what you are scored on, what you score is how well or how properly you have formatted. Right? You see the date over here has been mentioned as 4th of November 2017. Then we go to the salutation part. Because the manager could, in the current scenario we are in, be either a male or a female, you write dear sir oblique ma'am. Again, leave one line and write the subject. Complaint regarding poor quality food and bad service at your restaurant. This subject gives the reader a clear idea of what the topic is about, and normally when people in departments, when people at high levels are flooded with so many letters, they read the subject line and then decide whether the letter has to be read or it can be given a backseat. So this helps a person understand the order of priority. Well, in this case, you are writing in an exam, so You just have to stick to the rules. We come to the body. This is with regard to our unsatisfactory dining experience at your restaurant on the aforementioned date, right? The formal letter starts right away with the topic. You don't have to beat about the bush, write about here and there, and then come to the topic. Directly, straight away, you can come to the topic. This is with regard to our unsatisfactory dining experience at your restaurant on the aforementioned day. You go ahead and explain. It was reunion time for my family and I had booked a table for 12 at your restaurant. After checking online reviews and upon recommendations from my colleague about the same, we ordered a multi-cuisine menu and asked the waiter to serve the appetizers along with the soup. So this is you giving him some background information. Otherwise, going right away into the nature of the complaint would not be possible, and the person who's receiving the complaint would not be able to get an idea. So this short a paragraph is necessary. I'm sorry to say that the food served was cold and unsavory and did not match the quality that you boast of in your website or what your reviews claim. We asked for a replacement meal, but your staff seemed disinterested and ignored us. Our repeated demand to speak with the manager too fell on deaf ears. We paid the bill under protest. Now, this is something that this writer wants the reader to be, to look into again with attention, and so it's in quotes. And I have mentioned the same on the bill along with my contact details. You end with saying, the person ends with saying, I still await a response from your end. I urge you to look into this complaint urgently and refund at least part of the hefty bill that we ended up paying in spite of all that we had to endure. I hope to get a satisfactory redressal from your end soon and that I will not have to seek help anywhere else. Okay, so this is how you end, more or less. The words are yours, the choice of language is yours, but you have to ensure that everything is formal. The tone that you adopt has to be very formal and polite. Even when you're writing a complaint letter, you don't have to use very harsh or strong words. You just have to understand that it goes to a person to whom you are informing or passing on the message. So this person is not good, may not be directly involved in the process, may not have an idea at all, and this person is not the offender. So you have to make your tone polite and formal. Therefore, whichever words you choose to express yourselves with have to have this tone. The complimentary clause goes with looking forward to a favorable response. Now, instead of writing thanking you over here, which would definitely not be suitable because there's nothing to thank for. In this case, the person is aggrieved. He has a grievance and he's complaining. So normally you would not write in the complimentary clause something like thanking you. So looking forward to a favorable response is appropriate, and you have to keep the appropriateness of your expressions in mind. Then yours faithfully, leave a few lines for signing, and the name of this person here is Satish Kumar Arora, and as you can see, I've put the name in brackets, right? After writing a letter or typing out a letter, please make sure that you go back and read it again, so that you can be sure everything that you have written follows the protocol of a formal letter. There is no error in terms of grammar, logic, or typographical errors, and only then you close. Otherwise, you will end up losing marks. Now, every part of a letter carries marks. I can't tell you how many marks are assigned. That depends on the people who will assess or evaluate your letters. But let me tell you this, that every part of a letter carries some marks definitely, and you have to make sure that whatever you write is accurate. Please do not use hi-fi language over here or those kind of vocabulary or words which common people may not understand. You have to be short, to the point, precise, crisp, accurate, and logical, right? So this was an end to some inputs on formal letter writing. Now we move on to informal letter writing. Well, informal letter writing is quite easy, and it is defined as A letter which is written to someone we are acquainted with or we are familiar with and we know, and the purpose for which it is written could be many or any. It's also called a personal letter, and the person who receives it or to whom it is addressed could be anybody among from our social circle. It could be a relative, a sibling, a friend, or anybody with whom you have had a rapport or a personal touch. There are various reasons for writing informal letters. Now, reasons apart, you have to begin writing properly. You have to understand that it is imperative that you determine the purpose behind doing so. That means behind writing what you are. Because they are very casual in their tone, it does not mean they do not follow any plot or structure or pattern. They are definitely casual because you are addressing or writing to somebody you know, but still there are certain guidelines that have to be kept in mind, and you have to stick within the boundary. It is essential to have some basic knowledge of the principles and rules that govern informal letter writing approaches. Irrespective of the reason for writing, there are general guidelines, as I just told you, concerning the structure and style of an informal letter with which you need to get acquainted to. And let's see what they are. Let us first look into a few of the multiple reasons for writing informal letters. You could write to congratulate someone on a wedding, birthday, birth of a child, graduation, etc. You may write a letter to thank someone for a favor, an invitation, an advice, etc. You may be writing to invite someone to a wedding, a retirement party, housewarming party, baby shower, or any other celebration at a social level. You could write to accept or refuse an invitation. Now, this is something which you have to keep in mind. Whether you accept somebody's invitation or whether you choose to not attend a party or a ceremony or turn down an offer, it's important that you know that letters are written for this purpose also. An informal letter could be written for requesting information or replying to such a request, apologizing or expressing regret or sympathy, asking for or giving advice, recommendations, sharing experiences, etc. Fine. So there are 101 reasons and more for writing an informal letter. I just gave you a few of them. Again, as I told you, parts. Even an informal letter has parts, and you have to keep these parts in mind before you start writing a letter. These parts are starting with address, followed by date, salutation, introduction, body, conclusion, and the signature. Now, let us take a look at the description of each part individually. Starting with the first part, which was address and date. Now, the address and date have to be written at the right-hand corner in this order. Now, here we are talking about the person who is writing. So, when you write your name and you need not write your name because your name comes at the end. Your address in short and the date is on the right hand side corner, and it is separated with a line in between. Then you come to the salutation. You don't here have to write anything else. Salutation, the most common term is dear, because anybody whom you know can be addressed as dear. Dear brother, dear sister, dear friend, dear papa, dear mama, or anybody else. Then the dear is followed by either the term that you use to address that person, as I said, dear brother, dear sister, or followed by the first name of the recipient. Because it is an informal letter, you should not write dear Mr. So and so, because at a formal level we don't use these terms to address people. And again, it has to be punctuated by a comma. Well, there's a typo error. Must be punctuated with a comma. Then we come to the body of the letter. The main content of the letter starts with the introduction. Introduction is the first paragraph of the letter. Because it's an informal letter, you can actually write anything in the introduction, but you have to make sure that this paragraph contains relevant information that gives the recipient an idea of why you are writing to him or her. That means, much as I say you can write anything under the sun, you should keep in mind the reason that has to be mentioned in this part, else the purpose of writing is not met. And because it's an introduction and the main part will come later, it has to be restricted to a couple of lines. It should not be less than 2 lines, and normally it should not cross more than 4 lines. Then we come to the body. The body is where the bulk of the informal letter lies. That means the bulk content is found in this part. It can extend to 2 paragraphs, 4 paragraphs, and well, you can actually write as much as you want to in an informal letter, depending upon the relationship and the rapport that you share with that person and what all you need to tell him. But we have an exam in mind, and when you are asked to write an informal letter in an exam, normally the word limit is given to you. So you have to be conscious of that, and you should not exceed the number of words. It is therefore important that you limit the body to 2 to 4 paragraphs, which is enough, right? It contains detailed information about the topic at hand. After body comes the conclusion. Conclusion is the last part or the last paragraph of the letter, and it sums up the main idea or the main topic. That means here you need to reiterate the reason for your writing, and therefore the information here has to be crisp again and important. Here you can even ask a question. You are not limited to anything. You don't have to be specific about anything. You can ask a question, right? The closing over here can be any of these which I have given you, or anything of your choice. Normally people write loads of love, or yours lovingly, your loving so and so, your loving son, your loving brother, your loving friend, best wishes, yours forever, right? Or just yours. So again, depending on the kind of relationship you share with the person to whom you are writing an informal letter, the closing can be chosen accordingly. Finally, we come to the signature part. The signature is your name, right? Your name, and below it you sign. Now, at times in an informal letter, this PS, or which is expanded as postscript, has come from the time when letters were written by hand. So after having written an entire letter, if a person forgot something, it was not possible to insert that piece of information anywhere in the letter, because it would either mean the letter be rewritten by that person, or some scribbling be done at a part where the presentation of the letter would get affected. So this PS or postscript was included. Now, normally nowadays we don't need it, because we type out letters and we have opportunity to go back to that part and insert this information that we miss out. But just in case you are writing a letter and that is in ink, you can write PS and give that information at that part. Now, where you do it is after your name, after signing your name. So if you want to add a PS to your personal letter, skip a line and start the PS on the left part. That means the left side of the letter, right below your signature. Again, here we have a sample informal letter for you. Okay, questions are coming in. Please hang on. Please be a bit more patient. I'll deal with questions at the end. Let us first go through with the information that is relevant and important in terms of the topic at hand. So this is a sample informal letter. Write a letter to your friend inviting him to your housewarming ceremony. So this is a letter which has to be written. It's an invitation letter, right? It starts with the address of the person who's writing, and after skipping a line, you write the date. Now, though I mentioned that this information, let me go back to this part. I mentioned that the address and date need to be written at the right hand corner in this order, address and followed by date. This is again not very hard and fast, or very there's no stringency about this. You can also follow this order. Normally in exams, this is the conventional order or the recommended order. Otherwise, if you are not comfortable with it, you may write it, the address and the date on the right hand side of the letter. So here 1-5-900 by 105C Forest Plaza, ground floor, Himayatnagar, Hyderabad, with the pin code Telangana. Skip one line and write the date 14th of November 2017. Okay, now the person addressed to is Ranjit. So, dear Ranjit, how are you? It's been quite some time I wrote to you. Hope you are fine and so is everybody else at home. I hope you remember me telling you about my plans to buy or build a house of my own. Well, those plans have materialized and I am now ready to shift into the premises. So, after dear Ranjit, which is the salutation, we move on to the introduction part. As you see, very, very different from the content or the structure of a formal letter. The introduction can have anything. It starts with a question, how are you? And then it gives information pertaining to the person, to the person who's writing the letter, and about what he has planned to, or what he and share a memory, right? So it's not restricted to anything, but please make sure it's crisp and short. Again, it should not be too long or overtly long. Normally 2 or 3 lines are enough. Then the body, I was completely immersed in a plethora of activities that go into the construction of a house, and was hence left with little time to socialize. This house is a luxurious duplex with a total of 5 rooms and is well ventilated. The best part is that it is housed in a gated community and is well designed as well. So you see, this person, because probably he shares a very good rapport with his friend, he's describing everything that has gone into the construction of the house, describing the house itself. I have always been fascinated by the sight and smell of greenery, and there is a lot in the surroundings there. So the description of the house ends, and then you change the paragraph. You are aware of my fetish for Vastu, and this house is completely Vastu compliant. Now, why we change the paragraph, although the information is still about, this person is still describing the house and its layout, is because in the first paragraph, the piece of information is something else, and then in the second paragraph, later on, it moves to something else. It's about Vastu. So there is a slight change in the information, so we change the paragraph. You're aware of my fetish for Vastu, and this house is completely Vastu compliant. It is housed in a serene and meticulously landscaped area, enjoys proximity to the necessities of modern life, and still promises peace to its residents. The best part is the connectivity of this area to the rest of the city and nearness to various reputed schools. It is beyond and yet within bounds. So as I told you, the sky is the limit. You can write anything and everything, but you have to limit yourselves to the number of words that the exam or somebody has asked you to restrict yourselves to. Though initially I was unsure of settling in a locality, is the third paragraph of the body now, far away from the one in which I was brought up, and where all my near and dear ones stay, I overcame all inhibitions after I checked into all aspects personally. So this is again some further information that this person wants to give his friend, and so we change the paragraph and move on. I'm hosting a housewarming ceremony for a handful of my close relatives and friends on the 26th of November 2017 and want you to attend the function along with your family without fail for lunch. Now this is the main part of the body, because here the actual purpose of writing this letter to a friend is being presented. Since it is a Sunday, there should be fewer hassles involved in traveling this far. The particulars of time and address are in the card that is attached with this letter. Fine. So we had 4 paragraphs which constituted the body of the letter. After that, we move on to the conclusion. Please make it a point to set aside time and visit me and give us your wishes for starting life at the other end of the city. The rest of our gang too has promised to be there. So even in the conclusion, the author is making sure that he gives some incentive, something extra, and also reiterates the reason for writing the letter. So please make it a point to set aside time and visit me and give us your wishes for starting life at the other end of the city. The rest of our gang 2 has promised to be there and spend the entire day with us, and I hope that's another incentive for you to come over. So because he's writing to a friend, he's luring him into coming. Do convey my regards to your parents and love to the rest in the family. Right? So this is the conclusion. It ends. You've seen how short to the point it is, and yet it's descriptive because it's an informal letter. There's a personal touch in it. Through the letter we find there's a personal touch because it's an informal letter. Looking forward to meeting you here is the complimentary close. It's a phrase, and then your loving friend. Instead of your loving friend, any of those things we discussed could be written like yours lovingly, or anything which you choose to, which is you're comfortable or convenient with, and then end with writing your name. Please make sure that there is a comma after the complimentary close group of words or phrase, and there is a comma, there's a punctuation mark after the words your loving friend too. Make sure you don't write your full name here because it's an informal letter, so you don't have to write your full name. You need to write that name. It could also be your nickname because this is the name your friend or the person to whom you are writing the letter, to whom you're addressing, calls you with. So here you don't have to write your full name because it's an informal letter. Right? So I hope all of you have understood the rules that go into letter writing. 1, the definition of a formal letter and an informal letter, the layout and structure of each of these kinds of letters, and of course I hope the sample letters have given you further clarity on the same. Let me now look into the questions that are popping up. Well, as I said, there's a question which says, ma'am, you said that you should write it, the address and date on the right hand side, but in the sample letter it's on the left. Well, as I was explaining, I told you it's not mandatory that you stick to this. Normally we write it at the right hand side, but then it's absolutely fine to write it on the left. Rules related to letter writing, informal letter writing, keep changing, and these, as long as you have the address and the date in place, it's absolutely fine. You don't have to write it in the middle. You can write on either sides, but currently in modern English the date is being written both, on either sides, either on the left or on the right. So I did say that when I was explaining it. I hope I've answered this. What is the difference between informal and formal letter is very clear. An informal letter is a letter that you write to a person you know, somebody whom you are acquainted with or familiar with, and it can be your friend, your neighbor, your colleague, or your childhood friend, your relative, your sibling. If you're working far away from home, you can write to your parents. There's no limit to whom you can write, provided the person is somebody whom you are whom you know and you share a rapport with. And a formal letter, I think I'm repeating what I said in the beginning, is written to somebody at a formal level, and in most cases you are aware of the designation and maybe probably also the name of the person to whom you're addressing this letter, but you may not know who he is personally. Of course, at times we write to people. Let's say if you're asked to write a letter to the director of your company, if you're working, or you're writing a letter, you're asked to write a letter to the principal of your college. Now you do know the principal, but you cannot write to him at an informal level. So you have to stick to the rules that go into formal letter writing. I hope I'm clear. Is it? Well, thank you. Now, what is the type of sheet we get for writing? The sheets that you get for writing are rule sheets. Nowadays, and if it's in an online mode, then you'll have to probably type out. Okay, I don't think that's something that should bother you. It's a very manageable situation. There's no structure. Somebody is asked, yeah, what is the Shubha? Shubha says, What is the structure of writing a date? There is no structure of writing any date. You can write it 14th of November 2017, or you can also write it as 14.11.2017, right? As long as what you're writing is clear and the person who reads can understand, there's no structure as such that you have to follow about the date. If there's no name mentioned in the question, we are supposed to write our own name. Should we write actual names and address? Now see, the sample letters that I presented did carry names. But in an exam, it is as advisable that you do not write names at the end. You do not write your own names. You just write X, Y, Z, or you write anything which is not your name. Now, even if you write a name which may not be your name, the examiner may not have an idea about that. So it is advisable that you do not write any name and write your loving friend XYZ. Okay, so that keeps you on the safer side. What are the expected topics to be prepared? Someone asked this, Swadha Mahajan. Now, expected topics for letter writing, I cannot give you a topic as such. I think broadly I have covered the topics that you need to keep in mind, and right, you can, as I said, it could be a complaint letter, it could be a letter inviting somebody at a formal level, it could be to thank somebody for a favor you receive from that person. So broadly only the topics can be given. You cannot be given a topic essentially or a list of topics, but we do have those topics in our mock test. So let's see what best you can make from them. Normally you're also asked to write a letter to the editor of a newspaper, or to the director of the municipality, or to a bank manager regarding some complaint or grievance you have. So as long as you are aware of the content, the topic is very explicit, it tells you what to write. You just have to expand, keeping yourselves in the boundary of what has to be written, and following the structure, the inputs, the rules, and I think your job is done. So it's not, irrespective of what topic they give you, letter writing at a formal level should not be difficult if you follow the rules to the hilt. Well, Sanjana asking me if in a formal letter, should every line of address be followed by a comma? Well, Sanjana, earlier we did have that. After every line of address, there would be a comma, but now this is outdated. So there has to be no comma anywhere at all. You just write in the manner in which I wrote. I'll go back to that part again and show you how you have to write it. So see, it says plot number so and so A, road number so and so, Jubilee Hills, Hyderabad, Telangana, pin code. Fine. I haven't used any comma anywhere. Please stick to this. Okay. Well, there is no need to write. That's what you also asked. Somebody asked, okay, should I write from and to before writing my address and the recipient's address respectively? Well, the parameters are very clear. Everybody knows that in a formal letter, the first comes the address of the person who's writing the letter, and the address of the person to whom the letter is written comes later. So normally in modern English, we do avoid these terms from and to. Writing them is not bad or wrong or incorrect. You won't lose any marks, but then if they're not a part of standard usage, it's better you avoid them. Hitishi asked me a question. What if we write the address at the end? The address at the end, I didn't get you. Address at the end of the letter. Well, it's not allowed. It's not permitted. It's not the rule at all. You have to format your letter according to the rules that I have discussed with you. So that's ruled out. And you asked me, when is the webinar on essay writing? You will be given this information on our website. So just hang on. How should I improve both formal and informal letter writing? Can you suggest any material? Now, even if I refer a material or tell you, there are so many grammar books, and there's so many books on the same, there's so much of content on the net. The best way to practice is by keeping these rules in mind. This should broadly cover everything that you need to know about letter writing. So keeping these rules in mind, you have to write. Now, the more you read, the better off you are about writing. Your expressions improve, your command on the language grows, and whatever you write, if it is grammatically and logically correct, then your job is done. So practice is something that you have to keep in mind. Is yours truly formal or informal? Well, yours truly is not actually informal, but then in standard letters, we do not write yours truly. It's the best thing is to even overlook yours faithfully if you're not comfortable with that. Yours sincerely can be used for anybody, a person whom you know or a person whom you do not know. Yours truly is generally to be used for somebody who knows you and whom you know. And so if you are very sure that the person to whom you are writing a letter is somebody you know and he knows you, then fine, it's right to use yours truly. But in an exam, please avoid using these phrases. Can we write the date before the address? Now, Shekhar, date before the address is not right. It's not the proper structure. So I don't think it should be done. Prasad says, hello ma'am, can we mail you some samples on that? You can review them. Well, I hope you understand it's very difficult to review letters. It's best that you follow the rules that are given to you and write letters on your own. And if you are time students, then well, you can get it checked by your own faculty members. So I hope that's answered. On which editor, 1 minute. On which editor do I practice writing? Is Notepad okay, or the descriptive mock test on website is suited? See, the mock tests include a number of topics. So if you take a lot of, the more mock tests you take, the better you are. So I would definitely recommend that. Again, Prasad has asked, at the end, is writing the name in brackets mandatory? Well, when you sign, everybody may not have a very good handwriting. I hope you understand that your handwriting may not be legible. So how would the person know your full name, your actual name, your complete name? Most people do write legibly, but some people just scribble, and it's not easy to decipher what they've written. And in brackets, you write your complete name, your full name. You may have a first name, a middle name, and a surname, and it's okay, and it's best to write all the three, or whatever, however many words are there in your name at the end in brackets, because it will give the reader clarity on what and who the person who's writing is and what his name is. Because when you write, it may or may not be clear. So why do you have to take a chance? It's always right, and it is a part of the rules also to write your name. Pratyush, is there if there is, okay, if you are, it's been mentioned 150 words, is there any problem to write in less than 150 words? Well, it's very difficult to write even a formal letter in less than 150 words, because though overall only the body part, the main content is considered, normally you do exceed the word count. And if you're writing in less than 150 words, your letter may not be very clear. The information or the message that you're trying to convey may not get conveyed absolutely properly. So which is why these exams give you a stipulated word count. So most of the times I've seen people exceeding the word count, which is also something we should not do. 10-15 words here and there don't make much of a difference, but then you more or less you need to stick to the number of words that has been suggested there. Okay, you're not able to hear anything? Well, and yeah, who's this? Pratiksha has asked me to explain about the signature part in both the letters. Well, I don't think there is too much to be uh, understood in the signature part. The signature line is the end of the letter. Okay, I've taken the screen, the slide back to that, where the description on signature line has been given to you. It marks the end of this letter. Now, hand signatures for typed letters. Now, normally, if you type out a letter and you want to put it in an envelope and send it, then you would take a printout and you have to sign it in your hand. So a hand signature is necessary over there. Skip one line after the last paragraph of the body of the letter and type the closing. So throughout, whether you're writing a mail, whether you're writing a letter in hand, whether you're typing or writing, you have to ensure that each part is separated from the other. You cannot have a crammed letter, so it has to have some spacing in between. So it's always advisable that you have one line space in between your paragraphs, and this continues throughout. Fine. When you write the signature line, it has to be definitely punctuated by a comma, and several lines are to be left after the closing and type or print for your signature. Actual handwritten signature is to be inserted between these two printed lines. Okay, so I hope this is clear, and there's nothing much that goes into the signature part of an informal letter. Anyway, I'm taking you there. You just have to write your name, and below that name you don't have to sign. Okay, so that's very clear. And I added a line about postscript, that in case you missed out something and the letter is a handwritten letter, you can just add that particular bit of information that you have skipped writing, mentioning somewhere in the body part, and that's done. Well, this question asked is, I have seen in other websites that after sender address, they have asked to write date, and after that only recipient and formal letter. Please do not trust any site. Okay, there are standard rules for letter writing. If you go to any website which does not give you relevant, correct, authentic information, then it might affect your preparation. So please stick to these. We have drawn this information from actual grammar books, and we know what the rules are. So please do not deviate. Stick to these so that you're successful in that part of the exam, right? Now, Rani has asked me, should the body alone contain 150 words? Now, I don't know what you're talking about. If the letter has to be written in 150 words and it's a formal letter, normally 150 words are only, I mean, you're asked to write only in a formal letter in 150 words. Now, it's not the body alone, it's the complete structure. Now you can remove the you may not add the address, okay, the inside address and other parts. The body plus the complementary clause, the signature, everything should add up to 150 words. So this is something that you have to keep in mind. Well, Verma asks, who is this? Rashmi Verma asks, how can we work on the content part? How can we improve it? Well, Rashmi, let me tell you, the more you read, the better off you are with letters. You take our mock tests, you write letters yourself, you just think of some topic and start writing. Keep the rules in your mind. The more you practice, the better you are with the content. If it's an informal letter, then I don't think content should be a problem, because as I told you, you can write anything and everything. The only thing is that you have to keep the grammatical rules in mind. You should not commit errors in terms of grammar or spelling or anything else which may make you lose marks. But then content should not be a problem. And if it's a formal letter, the topic itself gives you an idea of what to include in the content. So you just have to expand on that. It's not difficult at all. I think about the punctuation. People are asking me questions on punctuation, how to punctuate. I think I have been very clear in telling you where to punctuate. After the end of each line in a letter, each sentence that you write, normally the most commonly used punctuation mark is a full stop. So you have to have a full stop there. If it's a very long drawn sentence and you need that, and you need to have a small pause to insert a comma. So in the content part, in the body part of the letter, I don't think punctuation should be a problem. And wherever else commas are necessary, I think I have given you very, very clearly on the slides where the punctuation marks have to be present. So please go through it again and understand it. Keep in mind, practice, and you'll get it. Salutation should come after subject. No, the subject comes after the salutation. Salutation, as I told you, subject is a part of the body of the letter. So when you write the salutation, that means you're addressing the person who will receive and read your letter. So let's say you write, Dear Mr. Saxena. Now you've written, Dear Mr. Saxena, this is the salutation. Then you skip a line, and on the next line you write subject, and then you write the subject in a very short. The subject is more or less the topic that you are asked to write a letter on. I gave you in the example, so please consider it. And only then should you start the body. Please don't put the cart before the horse. Don't write the subject first and then start the salutation. The subject comes after the salutation. Fine? Sandeep, yes, please can you kindly put the total letter as a single slide. Now, well, Sandeep, I don't think that's possible, but I'll go back to those slides again and give you a look. If this is a formal letter now, I'll take each letter at a time. So, this is the topic, an example of a standard formal letter, the topic. Then you have a date, you have, sorry, the address, the inside address, the date, salutation, subject. You start with the body, continue in 2 paragraphs, right, end. Fine. You write the complimentary close, yours faithfully after that, the signature line, and followed by the signature line. Am I clear? Okay. Now just again take a look at the informal sample letter. Over here, see, it's a letter to your friend, so you write your address. You may or may not write the address in such great detail, right? Over here, I have written it for you so that you get clarity and you understand things. But you may not write your address in such a detailed manner. After that, you write the date. Now, whether you write a detailed address or you write your address in short, the address has to be present there, and the address has to be followed by the date. And then you come to the salutation. After salutation, immediately you start with the introduction. As I told you, it runs in 2 to 3 lines. Then move on to the body. The body can be from 2 to 4 paragraphs. The conclusion again, and the rest is before you. I took pains to explain, so I hope now this gives you better clarity. In the formal letter, should every line of address be followed by a comma? I've answered this. Okay, I think I've answered most of your questions, and a few of them have been repeated. So I think those people too would be satisfied. What is salutation? Salutation, I explained. Salutation is nothing but what you write to address Dear Mr. So and so or Dear so and so. That's salutation. mean, yeah, here's one question about paragraphs. Ma'am, should there be a one-line space in between the paragraphs? Definitely, you have to have space between your paragraph. Otherwise, your letter will, the presentation of whatever you are writing or giving has to be very, very clear, accurate, and properly formatted. So unless and until there is a one-line space between your paragraphs, your letter will look very crammed and congested, and it's not going to it'll not be good for anybody's eyes to read it. So you have to keep this part in mind. How do I write a letter to my police department? To 1 minute. How do I write this one question? Just let me read it out. It's not very clear. How do I write a letter to the police department, to my police department? Okay, maybe the police department, police cell in your area, requesting an officer to be posted at a crosswalk near my school. Well, Swapnil, there's nothing difficult about it. Please follow everything else that has been given to you about the structure, the plot, the layout of a formal letter. You can just write to the station master. Okay, you can write to the station master. This is to inform you, or this is to request you to post somebody here and there, and you can write the reason for that, and then end in the manner which we have just discussed. So it's not difficult or tough or out of the blue at all. You can write it, check, and then I think you'll be able to understand it, right? Well, thank you everybody for being online here. I think I've answered most of your questions, and I hope you had a good experience and you got some information that is relevant regarding both types of letters that we discussed, and I hope this helps you in your exams. Thanks a lot.